Hi, I'm Dr. Virginia LeBlanc, also known as Doc V, the Pivot Maestro. Welcome to the Define Your Path podcast for those seeking to define their own path into purposed entrepreneurship. This is a show about transforming perspectives, as well as inspiring and motivating you to think without a box by exposing you to global thought leaders, change agents, and legacy builders as my guest today, across industries on how they successfully define their path in life and business to profitability and sustainable wins. At Defining Paths, we operate in truth, transparency, and love to help you navigate the waters of your life and put you back in business. And the Define Your Path podcast is no different. It all starts in the mind, my friends. Will you be the captain or the crew is the question. Today's spotlight, I am so excited to introduce my new fast friend to you, Jeremy McDonald. Let me tell you a bit about Jeremy, and then we're going to give him the spotlight. Jeremy is an international best-selling author and speaker who has shared the virtual and live stages of many of the leading speakers of our time, including Sharon Lechter, Nichols, Vitale, Forbes Riley, Williams and Kevin Harrington. Jeremy has over 25 years of experience as a public speaker, coach, and energetic healer. With his diverse range of experience that spans from corporate settings to spiritual retreats in the mountains, Jeremy has been able to help many people find their full potential by aligning with their souls. Jeremy is the show host of the online television show called The Storytelling Alchemist Show that airs on the Los Angeles Tribune's network. And he is also the co-founder and creator of the Spirit Heart Cruise, which I hear is great fun. And it brings people together for a conference on cruise ships. Folks, Jeremy, welcome to the show. Let's welcome Jeremy. Welcome so much, Jeremy.
What an incredible introduction. Thank you, Dr. LeBlanc. That was amazing. And really, really do appreciate it.
My pleasure. And it's all you, right? Truth, transparency, and love. I'm just super excited to have you on the show. Thank you for making time. I know you're a busy man. We look forward to hearing your story, and how you faced your fears to love the skin you're in and pivot into pursuing your passion and soul purpose. So, we'll keep it simple for you on our podcast. We ask 2 questions and then we just flow. Those 2 questions are, how have you defined your path? And how do you help others define theirs? So the spotlight is yours.
Those are great questions. And thank you so much for having me on the show and to do my work. And so, let me go back in my life just a little bit. And I was basically a very, very shy kid. I mean, I was most teenagers and kids have a lot of doubt that goes in their mind and stuff like that. But the only thing good for me was very similar. I had a musical background as well, and was in the drum and bugle corps, traveled around the country, and but was interesting is that if you would have told me that 25 years later, or 30 years later, that I'd be on a podcast or speaking in front of people, I would have told you I was crazy, because I was nervous about even just walking up to somebody or going to a party with like 4 or 5 people in it and being introduced. So it was one of those things. So I ended up working for a call center when I was about 22 years old. And I was asked to be in the quality assurance department. So you can just imagine how boring that is. You're sitting listening to people's calls and grading how they're making phone calls. Well, my boss came up to me and asked me to go train a class called Foundational Customer Service Development. And I got certified in it, and they had to film me. And this is, I'm going to date myself, with a VHS player. And so
I remember those.
So they filmed me, and I don't know if you remember those jeans. They called them Jenkos in the 90s. They were the big baggy skater. Well, anyways, I'm wearing those in this video, and my legs are shaking, but you can't see it because the pants are so baggy that I can't see them because I'm so nervous. Well, I got what is called the trainer's bug. And meaning I got so pumped by watching people successful as a result of what I taught them on, or what I trained them on, or what I motivated them on. And that went on for many, many years. I absolutely loved that work. And then I got caught up in another idea that I should get titles and positions and stuff like that, because I still had an underlying self-esteem issue that was going on. So then roughly about 2006, like a lot of us, I lost my job and lost my house, lost my car, and most of my stuff was stolen from me. So every material object that I had was taken from me. And I was a very functional drug addict. I would go to work, and on the weekends, I would do some things that we probably shouldn't be doing with our body, but I was young and dumb. So, but what happened is I ended up looking in the mirror one day and saying, I'm not very happy. Now, here I was, I had a really good job. Everything was going great for me. I thought I had the relationship that everybody would want. But when I looked in the mirror and got really honest with myself, I wasn't happy. I was still looking for acceptance from other people. And through the title of Vice President of Operations, I thought it was a big wig. But I didn't feel very big inside. And so I went through what I would call 6 months of hell, I actually called it, because that's where I started, everything's just started, falling apart. Including down when I said all my stuff was stolen from me, I used to have all the 7 different musical instruments that I really cherished, and I traveled all over the country with them. Somebody had stolen them and pawned them. And so, but what does losing all your material possessions do for you? It strips you of everything. So the only thing you have left is you.
Yes.
And the only thing you have left is to think about yourself and where you're at. And I ended up being 32, moving back home to my mother's. And, 32-year-old men do not, and 32-year-old women, I'm sure, don't want to move back to their mothers either. So you're sitting there, and she was a very loving, kind person. She was a nurse. And I would just spend the days where she was at work in bed. Until finally I convinced myself that you have to at least put your clothes on, Jer, and take a shower, and then, move from maybe the bed to the couch. And
right.
And what I learned from that is you can pull yourself out of the worst by just taking small actions, small steps. And but we think we want to go from depression to peace like overnight. And so what I started looking at, was really the funniest part about this is I was sitting there thinking, that day in the mirror when I looked at myself and said, well, what is it you've always loved? Well, I loved, like I mentioned, as a trainer, I loved motivating people, helping people, and seeing them successful.
Yeah.
But when I realized that I didn't really have a lot of motivation in me, so I needed to find that within myself. And so I needed to look at the reasons why I went through all those things, and the avoidance of who I was, and all the pain and the depression. So I spent a good 4 years, 2006 to about 2010, practicing these principles because I had gotten Daniel Goleman's book on emotional intelligence probably like 5-6 years before that. So now I needed to take it from the brain and get it down to the heart and actually practice it. And so I started really practicing emotional intelligence. And first of all, I was not at the self-aware part when I had to do the regulation part, right?
Yeah.
So, and then I went through this journey where then about 2010, I met some amazing friends that I had to do the social awareness part. And make sure I started managing my relationships and my friendships. And so it really was this, and I will tell you, so people ask me all the time, what is your awakening experience? When did you have an awakening? I'm like, every single day. Because we're looking for this huge, profound shift. And so if they really want to ask me, 2006 was it. But really, it's been every day since then, and even previous to that. So anyways, what I do for other people is I wrote a book in 2012 called Peace Be Still. And so that book was my process of how I found peace in my life. And then the funniest part about writing a book about peace is then you realize that there's still layers of peace you need to to work on. So now you have to practice what you preach because you put it in print.
Yes, exactly. Dang it.
And so I messed up quite a bit even after that. And then my mother had passed away in 2012 as well, right at the same year my book came out. So I had to go through all the grief because I believe that we reincarnate and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I know where she's at. So I was now in avoidance of the grief I had for the loss of my mother. So through my show, I was granted this amazing gift because I ended up interviewing Dr. Raymond Moody. And we became friends for a while. And he became, in a sense, he helped me through my grief and helped point it out to me. So it's really interesting how the universe kind of brings us down this path. And so what I do is I help people realize that within themselves and to start looking at how the universe has actually plotting to do you good. And
Yes.
we think it's plotting to work against us, but it's actually what it's trying to do is that cosmic 2x4 I got in 2006 is because I was so unwilling to see where I was at.
Yes.
And it wasn't to torture me. It was to say, hey, you told us that if we didn't get it, you didn't get it by this point, we're going to hit you with that 2x4. And that's okay. And I can guarantee you, the people that are watching this, the people that write the books, they're the ones that got the cosmic 2x4s. That's why they're writing a book about it.
Exactly. Yes, please.
Go ahead. Oh, so my next book that I'm actually working on right now, I was a time management trainer in corporate America. And so I thought, how do I tie all? There's a reason why I've done all this corporate and spiritual and, studying the psychology of how things work and all the and energy and law of attraction and all that kind of stuff. There's a reason why I've studied all this, because everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
So I remembered I used to teach this exercise that I would have people manage their priorities based on their relationships and what they put all their energy into. And I thought, well, wait a second. Where we put our energy is because action creates manifestation.
Right.
And I thought, well, how many people are making themselves last on their list? On their list.
That was me. That was me.
So if you make yourself last, guess what's happening to all your dreams and your goals and the things that make you happy? They're the last thing on the list of priorities with the universe. They're like, all right. So your kids, your husband, your job, that's all. It's all your wife, that's all gonna be the priority. Not to say that they're not, but they also, if you're number one in your life, then your relationship to them is all going to be just as beautiful. And so our codependent society says, oh wait, no, I don't have to do that. I need to make so. Anyways, so that's what I have. That's the next book. But what I do is help people get their energies in sync and in balance, and work with their souls and get aligned with their soul's purpose. And if you can do that, hey, guess what? You're going to see some pretty cool stuff happening. So
brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Oh my gosh. I don't even know where to start, Jeremy. That was a mouthful, and it was all diamonds dropping. So here, let me start here. So what I heard, it was a running theme of which is really rooted in self-love. I think, just we fight through that self-esteem issues all the time, and we hide that pain with masks usually. But it's amazing to me that, and honestly, most of us are functional dysfunctionals, right? Until we decide to do something about the dysfunction. But just the fact that even going through all of that, walking through all of that, your soul purpose was still calling you and pulling you forward. That's so powerful. And I love how you say the universe, it really is meant to do us good, because most of us don't think like that, don't process it. It's always someone or something is against us. Let's talk a little bit more about any of that.
Well, it's interesting too. First of all, it's going to take us a little bit to change our mindset. And that's why the name of my business is called Storytelling Alchemy. The reason being is because, like you said, most of the stories within us is that the world is working, the universe is working against us, and that it's me against the world. And if we get in a relationship, it's us against the world. And so, but here's the truth is that, I'm sitting on the couch and then back in like 2006, 2007. And finally I'm telling Spirit, I'm like, you told me that you wanted me to do this work, but you're not really helping me out. And I'm like, what do you want me to do next? And I hear, get a job. And I'm like, what? I thought I was supposed to quit all this stuff and do this work and do this soul work. Well, what happened is that if you're in such a panic about money and manifestation and abundance, see, you can understand manifestation up here in the noggin, but until it's down here in the heart, and that goes through layers. And that goes through layers. So, and then what happens is that you have to do this in order to move to this, and you have to be grateful for this area first.
Right.
So what ended up happening is I went and got a job, and I ended up got a job that I was in for 3.5 years, and I got paid to write my book because it was so boring at the job that there was nothing to do for 8 hours a day. So the only thing I could do is read and write books. So I spent the first year just healing myself. Yes. But anyways, so everybody looking out there, this is not an instantaneous thing. Charles Manley said your spiritual journey is a lifelong journey. And so anyways, I went through all that and then and I went on my book tour, and I just thought I was on a 22 state book tour, which was a dream, and lived out of a van like a gypsy, went to all these amazing places, sold roughly about 1,400 books, which is great for a first-time author. And I just thought I was on top of the world, and I had to go, guess what I had to do when I got back?
What?
Get another job. And I'm like, and not even in my career, I was like busting phone calls and stuff like that with a headset. I was like, I told myself I'd never do this again. Well, what ended up happening? It was another boring job. And so I got to do what? Work on myself. So what I want to say to you all is that it's taken me a while to get where I'm at today, and I'm still working on myself every day. So then I wanted to travel more. So then I started doing trips to the park, because that's still traveling, even though it's 2 miles up the road. But what ends up happening is that, and I wanted to do videos. So the reason why I'm telling you this story is that a video I did still on my YouTube channel, one of my clients recently said, I saw this video of you and you had less gray hair. And so it was so motivating. And I was like, what was it? It was called Talk in the Park, and what we're missing in the park. And it was like, oh, and then it reminded me. Well, since then, I've been on all these cruises, created this cruise company called Spirit Heart Cruise, been to all these Mayan ruins. My mother was a Mayan shaman, and so I got to go to all these things. And so the answer to your question, it took me a long time to get there, is how do you change that feeling and flip the script? Because it's opposites. We have to flip and go to the opposite. Well, it starts by taking one step, and one step, and another step, and another step. And then eventually what will end up happening is you'll start to have faith actually turns into knowing. And so after my mother passed away and I came back from my book tour, I ended up living in a place where here I'm terrified because my mother's no longer there to chase it, because I've always been the type of person that takes that leap of faith, but knowing that my mother was there, that I could go get back in the nest if I wanted to. And so now I'm not there. So who do I have to depend on? Myself and my own manifestation. Well, what ended up happening in the last 10 years of my life is I was proven over and over and over and over and over again. I had a roommate that moved out literally 2 days before rent was due. And my boss called me up and said, hey, can you work over the weekend? It's double time and a half. So it gave me enough money to pay for my rent and groceries and stuff. So these are things that I want you guys to understand. And then, I started seeing my income like almost quadruple over 6 years. And so through clients and different things and consulting and stuff like that. So it's not, what happens is you play with this and you start saying, well, what if I could do this?
Yes.
What if I could, let's see if I can do this. And then you go, once you've stabilized yourself in that, what is it Maslow says, those hierarchy of needs, and you've stabilized the ship in that, then you start playing around with it and having fun with it. But what ends up happening is people say, they start swiping that credit card because they say the secret's that I just start spending money as if it's there, and then it overdraws their checking account. Well, that's not grounded in reality.
Right.
But what will end up happening is that if you make sure everything's taken care of, and then you start pushing towards a goal and continue to do intentional steps, the universe, because the action will create. Yeah. And sometimes we take risks. I mean, it's one of those things where you're like, I really feel this, I'm going to do it. But that's through a series of feeling it and making mistakes. And then you're like, no, that one doesn't feel right. And so, but you have to make the mistakes in order to understand and have discernment.
Absolutely.
And so, anyways, I'm sorry, I'm rambling now.
No. It's all fascinating. It's all good. And this is your spotlight. No, fascinating, because, it's what you're saying is what I have experienced, what so many others have who have kind of figured out the combination to the lock, is that you can always pivot. You can always redefine yourself.
Yes.
It's never too late. There is nothing that is keeping you in a certain place or space other than you. It's that gift that we all have of choice.
Yeah.
So, what I hear you saying, it's just a matter of tapping into it and start just taking those baby steps. You don't have to run, crazy people like me. I just run out full out sprint, right? I used to be a sprinter in another life.
Done that too. Well, here's kind of a fun story. So a year ago, I was probably you and I was in the Susie's conference with you in June last year.
Yes.
And so a month and a half later, I was sick with COVID for 3.5 weeks. And I literally was just laid out in bed. I couldn't do anything else other than lay there. Of course, the first thing that comes in is start to get fear.
Right.
And so then I'm like, I'm an energetic healer. So I'm like, no, no. If everything is energy, I'm going to work on this. So 3.5 weeks, I'm laying in bed, I'm working. But what I'm doing is I'm pulling up all these issues, emotional issues from childhood, doing a lot of forgiveness work and all this kind of stuff. Well, there was some situation in my house that I'm not going to go into, but it was a lot of drama. And I just decided it was time for me to move. And so the place I live in right now is something I've been looking at for over a year. So there's literally a restaurant I live in a river, across from the river, and I would look at that window and I'd look at this apartment building and I'd say, that or better, because I wanted to have this downtown living where I could just walk everywhere. And then our friend Kevin had come up literally about a week before I moved in, and I said, there's where I'm moving. And I hadn't even gotten the approved for the, I was number 11 on the waiting list. So I started applying for new jobs and stuff like that, and I doubled my income. And so because I started saying that or better, whatever the universe wants to put me in, I know what I want, and I want to step up, and this is where I want to go, and I want my business to be more successful, all that kind of stuff. So not only did I end up in the exact apartment I wanted and the exact level that I wanted, but everything just moved. I even got the furniture, everything matches completely, and I never even walked into the apartment till the day I got the key.
Wow.
And so what ends up happening is that there are some times where you sprint, but I'd spent a year manifesting this, and when it was time, I would say with COVID, I got myself so clear inside because I had like rage coming up and anger coming up, and I faced all that. So those energies within us actually block us from moving forward, because those anxieties and stresses in us cause depression. And by the way, depression means pay attention.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yes.
Pain means pay attention inward now. And so if we pay attention inward now, we know that we have to look inside and say, why am I suffering right now? What is it that I'm not in alignment with? And so, but oftentimes we actually keep on going and going and going and going and going, instead of sitting our butt down and getting quiet. And I've gotten rid of the term meditation because it freaks everybody out. I say, hang out with yourself for 10 minutes and just breathe. And what ends up happening is, for one thing, we don't breathe enough. And so when we breathe, we get a little drunk because from euphoria. And so it'll relax the body. And so, and then what you do is you say to yourself, send me the things that I could have done better today. And what should I take a look at? And so when we start to take a look at those things and growing, then we start changing our lives. But that was such a great thing of manifestation for me. And now I'm at this summer, it's a summerly thing, by the way, I'm at a new manifestation. So, but anyways, it's one of those things. Well, I told you before the show, but so that job I got, the mortgage industry is collapsing. I've been a training manager for 25 years now. So since that day that they asked me to do that class, well, they were like, hey, by the way, you're laid off. And I was like, thank you, universe. I was so grateful. I was like, can I hand you my laptop now? Because I was like, it was me saying it's time for me to let go. And I'd literally just had this incredible weekend meeting a bunch of different healers and stuff. And I was like, it's time for me to go. On Tuesday, they laid me off and gave me a severance. And there's a guy on Mind Valley I was just watching literally the week beforehand. He's talking about how he got a severance, and that's how he actually got started in this healing practice. And I was like, yeah, if that's the easy, whatever, universe, whatever you think, but you know better than me. And 4 days later.
Wow.
So it doesn't matter where you're at. Ask the universe, because the universe is your higher consciousness. And so if you start asking the universe, we have to ask, and then we shall what? Receive. And so, but we never ask. And so therefore we're stuck in this rut, and we get complacent because we're afraid. And so then once the opportunities come, here's the other thing, the action comes because you have to act on the opportunities when they come.
Yes.
So
and the other part to that, I would say, and oftentimes we don't knock, so the door will never open. So, I love that. I could literally just talk to you all day, Jeremy. Absolutely fascinating how you have overcome. And I imagine, my audience is just feeling like they're feeling so hopeful and inspired. And that's what it's all about, just, finding your soul purpose and just living that life, because we don't just exist to exist, and I think this is why, we tend to just remain in that box that, society puts us into, the conditioning puts us into, and we never stray far from that box if we even jump out of the box. So, to just flip your perspective, because perspective is everything. If we just embraced our fears, just start taking those baby steps, the universe will come to you. It's that law of attraction you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And here's the cool part. 2020, it was I'm going to go into my numerology nerd self. 2020.
Please, I love numerology. Yes.
2020 was a 4-year. So I'm not necessarily the most amazing numerologist, but I have friends that have taught me this. So 2020 is a 4-year. So that's about balance. 4 seasons, four things to bring balance. 2021 is a 5. So 5 is all about change of relationships and facing the inner stuff in you so you make major changes in your life. 2022 is basically now it's all about love, acceptance, and divine purpose. Yes. So this is the year, guys. This is the year for you to step into yourself. And if there's something you've been wanting to do it. Now is the time. It's not like you're going to, if you don't do it now, you're going to miss it. But now the energy is the optimal time. And that's the reason I want to be clear about that, because when people say these very strong things, they say, well, if I don't do it right now, I'm going to miss it. Well, I will tell you is a sense of urgency, because why waste more time in your life? Yes. And so even though you're in fear, and people love that false evidence appearing real, but it's really just, I want you just to take that step for yourself. And that's what I'm, myself and Dr. LeBlanc do. We help you with that kind of stuff. And so we get in there and help you push off that edge. I just did something recently after the whole laying off, and I had to pay for something. And I'm like, I feel like I'm jumping off a cliff, and either I'm going to grow wings or hopefully there's going to be a net that catches me. But that's the faith part. That's the faith. And then what ends up, because this is all uncharted territory. So what'll end up happening as I get further down the road, it'll become a knowing. So I knew my job in consulting as a training manager. I knew that without a shadow of a doubt. It's comfortable, but that's when the energy starts becoming complacent. Then you know that you have to make a change. So when you make that leap of faith, that's all new. So you have to have faith, because you're like, well, wait a second, I've been fine before, but I'm not really sure. Right. And then as I get 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, then there'll be a knowing. I'll be like, I know I'm a great coach. I already know I'm a good coach, but I'm just being self-employed fully in entrepreneurship. Yes. And I'm sure you can relate to this too, because you've had to make the leap of faith yourself. Yeah. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. I had a very similar experience, because we struggle with that whole imposter syndrome. I had 1 foot in, the workplace, 1 foot out, doing the parallelpreneur thing for so long. And then, and literally, as you said earlier in the conversation, my body started shutting down because of just the stress that I was under. My honey likes to say stress is a free disease, and it truly is. It's, we can choose to stay in stress or to stay in lack or move out of it. And so, I wish we had so much more time, Jeremy. I hope the audience has heard what you said and what you've been saying. Again, these diamonds that you've been dropping, because it's so true. We have the power, the energy. So many people looked at COVID as a bad thing. And yes, we lost so many people. In my family, I can't even tell you how many we lost, but to take a tragedy, a pandemic like that, and to find, to quiet your mind, that's what it did for a lot of us. It helped us to quiet our mind, to get clear on where we are, fighting through illness or, deciding, hey, this is not the life I want to live, and I know my self-worth and my capabilities. So I'm going to jump off of that cliff and fly. So, that was my story, but it took the universe. I'm one of those, you said 2x4, I have to have an 18-wheeler hit me, Jeremy. Just plain and simple, 18-wheeler has to hit me. So, because I'm loyal, I will stick it out. I will, I will do what has to be done. But, when my body started shutting down on me and I started feeling like I was like 30, 40 years older than I was, that was time out, and that was the universe telling me, okay, so clearly we do have to do this again and still.
Yeah.
Until you decide to choose you. So I love the fact that you've chosen you, that you are doing you, and that you are helping others do them.
That's honestly, once you get beyond all the stuff within you, then you want to be of service.
Yes.
And so when you want to be of service, because it's not because you feel like you're going to get something, you do, is what you put out there comes back 100-fold. But the difference is before there was a sense of manipulation, even on a subconscious level. I'm going to get all these things and create all this stuff. And here's another, I'll leave you with this really funny story. I had this program in me that I had to have a degree. I just had to have it. And so, and it was something that I'd been doing this for years. And I finally, during the pandemic, went back to college and I finished my bachelor's degree. And in about 4 months, I'll be done with my master's in education. And so did I need it? 25 years in learning and development? No. But there was something in me, and I was like, this is a sole purpose. There's something in here because I won't let it go.
Yes.
And all my friends that are PhDs and doctors and medical doctors, they were like, you don't need it, Jerry, you already do it. And I'm like, I know, but I know I have to. I can't not follow this path. And if it's in your heart, then you have to do it.
Yes.
But finally, one of my friends, Cynthia Higgins, she said, why do you feel like you have to do this? And she goes, does it come from a place of, because years ago, I came from a place where I'm sitting in all these rooms with all these people with this higher education, and I felt insecure with myself. And so I finally said, no, it's not about that. And what's happened as I'm studying this is I'm learning that, hey, I do know what I'm talking about. And so, but I had to go down that path, and I'm understanding the psychology and the science of why I've been teaching the things that I've been teaching. Yes. And I'm like, wow, is that the reason why? And I've just gotten it from observing and experience. But that's the reason why it's helpful. So just because you feel like you don't need to do something, well, you don't need it because you had the experience, it doesn't mean you can't do it. Because what it's taught me is the definition, the science behind why people learn the way they do, why they respond to the things the way they do, and stuff like that. And that was just something I naturally picked up. And so what I will share with you is that, and it's cool. Now, let me tell you, at 48, I do not want to do the homework some days. It's, but of course, now I'm paying for it, unlike when I was like 21 or 16. So it's like, oh, you better get in there and do it. Yes. But it's one of those things that I just want to share with you all. Follow your path and follow your heart, and you'll be on the right track. So.
Jeremy, you are a kindred soul. I just adore you. Thank you for all of those divine downloads and just for sharing your truth with transparency and in love. So thank you for being our spotlight today.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Audience, I want you to be sure to follow Jeremy on social media. Check out his The Storytelling Alchemist show. Jeremy, tell them where best to connect or how to find you and what you're up to.
My website, storytellingalchemist.com. And by the way, if you go in, there's two things. If you go sign up for my newsletter, it sends you back a free meditation. There's also an audio on there. It's me and my friend Virginia Drake talking about Peace Be Still. And if you use for a 45-minute session, Say Yes to You, that's the coupon code, you'll get 40% off on one session with me. So.
Okay. Awesome. Folks, go out, do it. Jeremy will help you get on the path to changing your life and defining your path. So you'll be able to connect with him, read his full bio again on our Define Your Path podcast platform. Be sure, as always, to visit our virtual home and see what we're up to at definingpaths.online. That's PATHS.online. We're up to an awful lot, and we'd love to have you come and be a part of our family. I'm Doc V, the Pivot Maestro, and always your corner woman. Be true to you and define your path. We'll see you on our next episode. Thanks again, Jeremy.